This video is sponsored by Squarespace, so if you need a website, a domain or an online store, make your next move with Squarespace and use the discount code Andrew Marr. I'm always up for exploring new locations, particularly if the drive there is just as good as the destination. The track in here was pretty tame. Couple of water crossings, not too bad, even if you don't have a snorkel. It's all worth it though, because the views from the coast were spectacular. So we've made it down to the coast. We're still in Doncaster National Park, but we've got to a spot where we stopped for lunch at Westcliff Point. Grabbed a coffee and a bite to eat. So it's just early afternoon. The light is not great, but we're using our time to just go and explore some of the other bays. And we've stopped at a spot called the Fishing Shack, which is a nice little area. This is my car here, and behind me is Mark. And then over there is the Fishing Shack that you can see in the distance. And obviously some people still use it, those people who still know about it. Anyway, I've had a bit of a look through the bush there to where the cliff is and the bay, and it's really, really gorgeous. The cliff that kind of frames the bay is this gorgeous sandstone, as most of the rock is around here, but it's a really nice, bright, yellowy white colour. So if the weather does the right thing by us, and you might be able to see behind me, it's pretty clouded in, but there are a couple of breaks to the south that I can see, and that's where the weather's coming from. So if the sun can come through one of those breaks and cast a little bit of light on the cliffs, it's going to make the image so much better. It's going to create some detail and also some depth. If it's just flat light like this, the image ends up being a little flat itself. So anyway, we're just going to chance it. It'll just be a bonus image for us. I'm going to head on through and I'll see you on the other side. Right, that's not too much to ask for. A break in the clouds so the sunlight comes streaming in and hits those cliffs. Honestly, we'll be lucky if it doesn't rain on us. So I've made my way along the cliff and I've found a spot which I'm pretty happy with. I still have some challenges though. One of the biggest challenge is that it's quite a tight bay. It's quite deep and it curves around in quite tightly. That's not the real challenge. The real challenge is I'm trying to photograph it with the GFX100S. And I've only got one lens. It's the 32 to 64, and that's not all that wide, or I wouldn't consider it all that wide. If I just take a single shot with it, there's sea stacks off in the distance, pretty much in the middle of the bay, and I'm trying to get that and the curvature of the bay that will, along the left-hand side, that will draw your eye around, and then the cliffs will then eventually point to the sea stacks. But if I take a single shot with it, all I'm getting are the sea stacks and just the end of the cliff, and it's kind of coming in straight from the left-hand side. I have taken that shot, but I wasn't all that happy with it because there's a little bit more to it. There's these cliffs that kind of swing all the way around to my left, and I want to get that in the shot. It draws the viewer's eye around. It gives you more context to the shot. I think it certainly adds an element that isn't there if I just take a single shot of the sea stacks and just the end of the cliff. So the other thing, of course, is the water in the bay, and I'm not getting a lot of the water in the bay. There's some really nice colours in there. Once I've got the polarizer on, which I'm using, there are some really deep blues, and then there's these really effervescent, striking greens that I want to bring through. But with a too tight a shot on the sea stacks, I'm photographing the water over near the sea stacks, which is off in the distance, and because of the angle of the surface of the water, or to me, I'm getting too much glare. I'm not cutting through that glare even with a polarizer. It's the water that's more closer to the edge of the cliff, closer to me, closer to the camera, where you're kind of looking down. That's the better angle to kind of look through that water and see those colours. So that's only happening in the bottom third of the image. Anyway, as I said, I did take that shot, quite a tight shot.
As you can see, both the top and the bottom of the image isn't all that interesting, so I ended up cropping most of that out and filling the frame with the part of the scene that was interesting.
Not particularly happy with it, and I don't have a wide angle lens. So the solution, of course, is to take a pano, and that's exactly what I've done.
But I also moved back and forward along the top of the cliff to see if I could include different parts of the cliff in the frame.
So I just want to talk you through the sorts of things that I did to set up that pano. To start with, I put the camera into a portrait mode. I've still got it at 32mm. I made sure that my tripod was level, and I've got a little leveling indicator here, which is quite nice. And then all I've got to do is just loosen that knob there, and it just moves around. And I've just checked to see that it's getting all of the image that I want, and it pretty much is. I've got a little bit of this land mass on my right hand side, which I don't really want in the image. It's just going to kind of cut at the bottom right hand corner. And so what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to cut that out. So what I then did is I framed up my pano, or made sure that my pano was looking pretty good just by checking the edges, the tops and the bottom. And then I manually focused with, I've got the back button focusing set up on my camera. And I focused one on the end of the cliff, and the other one, I shot another set of panos on the sea stack out there. But I've got an aperture of 22, and keeping in mind that this is a medium format camera, so the aperture actually goes up to f32. So f22 is the equivalent of around about f16 on a full frame probably. So happy with that. I'm manually focused with back button focusing on the end of the cliff, and then I don't touch the focus again, because as I come around, the land is actually closer to me, and I don't want the camera to refocus. So I don't touch that. I don't touch any of the other settings. Just to tell you what other settings I did use, I'm on ISO 100, which is the base ISO for the camera, and the shutter speed is 1/10 of a second. So I don't change that. Even as I come around here, it might get lighter or darker. I've checked my exposure, but I want the same exposure for each of those frames, because when I merge them into Lightroom, I don't want to be messing around with exposures. I don't want to have shots that are focused at different parts of the scene either. So by setting up my focus at the end and setting it manually, and then not changing it throughout my shots, I'm going to get a series of shots which are all the same focus and all the same exposure. I've overlapped them by 1/2 to 2/3, so they should stitch up nicely in Lightroom. So I'm happy with that. Can't wait for Fuji to come out with a wide angle zoom. I know that there's the 23mm, but I don't really consider that a particularly good lens for what I want. I really want a wide angle zoom because it's more flexible and I can use it for a lot more different situations. Anyway, I've taken the series of shots. I'll probably do it once more. I'm just waiting for a little bit of light to come through the cloud and maybe get a little bit more light hitting those cliffs. But other than that, I'm really happy with this shot.
Before I share a few of the pano shots I took, I just want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Having your own place on the internet to share your images is becoming increasingly important as social media platforms become less effective places to share your images. Years ago, I chose Squarespace to build my website because it was just so quick to set up. Their templates make it really easy to build a clean look right across your entire site, which helps make your images stand out. I started with a simple image gallery, which just took a few clicks to set up. And over time, I've added a contacts page along with a blog to share my adventures. I now have extended my website with an online store where I sell my prints. I can monitor and make changes easily from either the desktop or their mobile app. So head on over to squarespace.com for a free trial, which will give you heaps of time to set up a website. And then when you're ready to launch, make sure you go to squarespace.com/Andrew Marr to get 10% off your first purchase. Probably would have been better to shoot this scene earlier in the day when there was softer light. But it was really interesting to see how much the composition changed just by moving a few steps along the cliff. Let me know which pano you prefer in the comments below. If you want to see the images I captured earlier that morning, check out this video.